Hello, everyone. I'm here with Rohan Verma, who is an executive coach. He runs a company called Arbor Advisory based in San Francisco. And he's here to share some perspective on what executive coaching is and how it can help. So thank you so much for being here, Rohan.
Tushar, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to sit down with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you've been a longtime friend, a longtime client of Twin Peaks, and I've actually, in the back of my mind, know that I've always known that you would be doing something very similar to what you're doing today. So I'm excited to have you here, and let's go ahead and dive right in. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to become an executive coach and what unique perspective or expertise you bring to your coaching practice.
First of all, I'm glad that you and I have known each other for almost 2 decades now, that there's maybe something about myself that may lead me to become a coach one day. And look, the coaching world is a wild, wild west. Anyone can call themselves a coach. There's life coaches, there's therapists, there's executive coaches. There's a low barrier to entry, but potentially massively high upside in living the life that we want to live, whether it's in our personal lives or professional lives. And I became an executive coach after spending about 15 years as a senior leader in the tech industry. I have experience in building and scaling some of the world's most commonly used tech products that you and I use every day, and probably most of your clients use every day, like LinkedIn and Dropbox. I was one of LinkedIn's first 250 employees, and I grew and scaled with the organization very early in my career. And it was wonderful having the ability to lead global teams, being LinkedIn's youngest director in my 20s, probably still to this day. I was afforded with a lot of the extrinsic value that we often get in our careers, compensation, titles, etc. But I felt like there was something missing there. And one of the folks that helped me truly understand that there may be something missing in what I wanted to do in my careers was an executive coach that I got at LinkedIn. And that really sparked my transition into becoming an executive coach. It really was somebody who helped me see that I, as a leader, wanted to coach, mentor, and teach in the long run. And we can talk a little bit more about what makes a great coach or what unique perspective they bring. But fundamentally speaking, I moved off the corporate ladder and working at growth scale companies. I was at Dropbox prior to its IPO as well, and then moved into a role where I'm an advisor. I'm a consigliere. I'm a thought partner. I'm an intellectual sparring partner for a lot of my clients.
Your vocabulary has always been very strong, Rohan.
I
Well,
promise I'm not reading from a thesaurus.
yeah, I mean, with your background at LinkedIn and Dropbox, is it safe to kind of say that you are a coach for tech employees, or should I not be bucketing you like that?
It's one of a few buckets, but it may not be as large of a bucket or as deep as a bucket as you think. And so if I were to lay out my practice, and Arbor Advisory has three key pillars. Half of Arbor Advisory's time is spent doing one-on-one executive coaching, whether it's with leaders in tech, which we'll talk about, or other industries. A third of my time is spent facilitating leadership development courses at hospitals like Kaiser, at companies like Affirm, at Airbnb, at the San Francisco Giants, where I'm the head executive coach, and elsewhere. And a third of my time is spent as a consultant, as an angel investor, and as an advisor to startup founders to help them drive strategic partnerships and M&A. But across my coaching practice, I would say 70% of my clients come from the technology industry. They're generally directors and above. They're generally folks in product and engineering. However, if that's the center of the bullseye, one concentric circle out are non-technical folks in tech companies. I ran a partnerships function at LinkedIn for a number of years. There's lawyers, general counsels at companies like GitHub and others. I also work at media companies. I'm the head coach for the San Francisco Giants front office executive team. I work with Sesame Street, surprisingly enough. And so there's a lot of tech, but there's some commonality there. The major bucket that's there next is finance, specifically in investment banking and consulting. I have several managing directors at boutique banks and several bankers at bulge bracket banks that are also my clients. But the majority is tech, just physically based in the Bay Area, and then also given my corporate expertise was in the technology industry.
Of course, I mean, even anecdotally speaking, we get to have hundreds of conversations a year with our clients, and I typically find that once people get to that director level and above within, a publicly traded corporation, that's typically when they start exploring the idea of having a coach, because they're looking to level up, or perhaps they're being thrown new challenges that they haven't had to face before or know how to deal with. So I think you've carved out the right niche. How do you kind of tailor your coaching approach to meet the specific needs and goals of the professionals that you're working with?
That's a great question. And I'll just opine on something you mentioned, and I promise I'll answer this question you just laid out, which is, generally speaking, the entryway that many of us would have to working with an executive coach, to even hear the term executive coach, is when you hit some level of seniority in your organization where a coach could be afforded to you as a perk or benefit. It could be a little bit more punitive, which is you may feel that there are blockers or communicated to you about blockers of growing to the next level and scaling to the next level, and you need some outside help. That's not a mentor, that's not an advocate, that's not a friend or a family member. And often that's where I first work with the coach. That's how I got a coach. That's where among most folks get coaches. There's an interesting trend in the broader industry. You may have heard of companies like BetterUp, Torch, and Sky, where all of a sudden now we've democratized the ability to work with a seasoned executive coach like myself to a more junior tranche of employees. And we can pull that thread a little bit later, but it is interesting. More and more less tenured, more junior folks in their career are able to accelerate and level up by working with an executive coach that's not necessarily paid for directly by their company. And that also gets to your question, Tushar, about, well, how do you tailor a program? There's a cottage industry, and you and I could go on Instagram right now and find people that will sell you their several $1,000 a year coaching package and buy my program, and within 6 months you're going to get a promotion, or buy my program in 6 months you're going to get into the C-suite. If there's a spectrum of cookie cutter content to the most bespoke, highly tailored advisory that there is, executive coaching leans towards the more highly tailored, but it often draws upon a lot of tried, tested, and true leadership development frameworks. So no matter whether you are one of my clients, head of revenue at the San Francisco Giants, or you are a head of brand creative at Sesame Street, or product manager, going to group product manager at Meta, all these people are my clients. No matter where you are in terms of the organizational structure, in order to really have an effective coaching program, you need to establish a qualitative and quantitative baseline for growth. Sometimes that is born out of, you may have a performance review, a career ladders document, or some kind of matrix that tells you to get to the next level, you need to demonstrate these core competencies. But that's a very limited view. That's from the view of your HR team based on your company principles. Often, in order to really understand where coaching can really help, you will take a 360 assessment. Some I think you may be familiar with are the Hogan assessment is quite common, the Myers-Briggs assessment. There's other tools in the industry that give you and your coach a qualitative and quantitative baseline on any number of leadership disciplines. Like, what is your ability to create empathetic relationships? Do you really listen with the intent to understand versus just trying to get your point in edgewise? There's dozens of these leadership competencies. So step number one, to answer your question directly, or to make a tailored program, is to calibrate. Like just like you would get a diagnosis for your body or your car, you know, an executive coach is like a personal trainer for your career. You need to get an assessment of your baseline. And then you start to understand a little bit more through discovery. What are some biases? What are some saboteurs that we all hold, each one of us, based on the way we make decisions, the way that we communicate, the kind of relationships that we want? There's a set of biases that we bring. Those biases can be a good thing based on our corporate experience. You know, you work with dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of different clients in all sorts of industries. And that gives you a certain perspective as well. I worked in consumer tech, but not in entertainment tech, right? And so that gives me a certain bias. A coach can help you control for that at the outset. So to make it short, in order to make an effective coaching program, get a calibration, understand people who know you, your managers, your HR team, your HR business partners, what have they indicated as growth and development areas for you, and then have an understanding of where do you want to be in your career? Doesn't always mean get promoted to the next level. Do you want to work in a smaller company where you have more autonomy? Do you want to be a cog in a big machine, but work on impactful products that when they ship overnight, they're in the hands of millions of users? So having some articulation of your true north, which you can get with a coach, all of those are necessary. Otherwise, you're spending a lot of money talk to somebody on Zoom or in person to like make you feel good. That's not
Right.
what coaching is. That's not what it is.
Exactly. I mean, I like what you're doing because it sounds very personalized, and I think that the entire world, every industry, every sector is moving towards personalized everything, right? There's personalized health, there's there's personalized medicine, there's personalized financial plans. I mean, you name it, every sector is moving towards personalization. So I really like the take that you have. Help our listeners understand some of the typical areas of focus or topics that you address during your coaching sessions, or what's typically, what are some of the main reasons people seek you out in the first place?
I'll give you an answer that's not satisfying, and then hopefully it will actually satisfy the answer, which is it depends, right? It ranges from, there's a few different sliders and variables. The level of seniority, does this person have coaching or not? Is this person on a performance improvement plan, or is this person on a growth plan? The opposite of a PIP, which is like you're on an accelerated growth plan.
Right.
Generally speaking, though, in the last 18 months, generally focus on the tech industry, but also in investment banking, there's a few things that tend to pop up with the cohort of leaders that I tend to work with, which is like mid to late career professionals. And I'll give you some examples of the topics and then some of the clients that I've worked with, obviously anonymized to respect their privacy. The first area is, how do you establish and maintain high standards with your team? Most of my clients are leaders, not just managers, do very different things. Most of my clients are leaders of other leaders, meaning they're at a VP plus and they have other directors under them. And so one of my clients is the managing director of a very large, well-known, publicly traded real estate development firm. In fact, the building I'm sitting here in San Francisco, my apartment building, is owned by this particular real estate development firm. And this particular individual has now inherited an extra 200 people under his purview. And some of those folks are lifers at the company, having spent 20 or 30 years there. Wow. And so establishing and maintaining high standards for him is understanding, well, what quality bar do we want for everyone across the team? It's not just setting the right targets and KPIs, but how do you truly tap into the level of greatness for every employee to make sure they have the skill and the will? So establishing and maintaining high standards, especially in highly competitive organizations, is an example of a topic area. And there's any number of tools and frameworks and structures and goals that you can set with your coach on that area. Another one that is quite common, that is probably one of the most ambiguous things that we define in the professional world, but paradoxically, this ambiguous skill is often holding us back, is strategic thinking and prioritization. I had the opportunity to speak at a conference last week, give a keynote at the Iterable Tech Conference. It's a tech company based in San Jose. And the topic was, how do you make the shift from being a tactical doer to a strategic thinker? And even though I worked in tech for the majority of my career, I was a political science major at Berkeley, where you and I went to school. I was pre-law. I'd never worked in banking or consulting, but I've only ever worked for investment bankers and consultants my entire career. There's a certain way of thinking at a systems level and future thinking that constitutes strategic thinking. So as an example, in a new situation there, a newly promoted associate general counsel at a FANG company is a client of mine. And she is now being measured on, how can I think strategically about the business? I'm a lawyer. I have to help this particular FANG company assess legal risk, but how can I think strategically about the business so that I have a seat at the table? That would be an example. A third one, amongst many, but the third most common one that comes up is, how do I navigate difficult conversations? And that difficult conversation could be giving feedback downwards to my team, managing upwards, but generally meaning to the C-suite, managing cross-functional stakeholders, external clients. I work with a lot of startup founders. I'm one of Bessemer Venture Partners vetted coaches for all the portfolio companies. And so a lot of this is managing stakeholders at the board level. And it's often quite difficult for folks who have leveled up in their career so quickly when you don't have anyone to be your sparring partner to help you understand, well, are you really inspiring confidence in the way you speak? Are you truly perceived as an executive? Are you truly establishing trust? And so there's any number of ways, even using some AI-based tools that I use now to help clients navigate difficult conversations and to be perceived as a more effective communicator. So there's any number of different areas, but the ones that tend to bubble up are, again, how do I establish and maintain high standards as a leader? How can I up-level my strategic thinking skills, and how can I navigate difficult conversations and communicate effectively?
Yeah, I really like that that last thing that you said about kind of improving the overall communication skills for someone, or helping them think about the next step in their career, and allowing them to communicate that vision to their management team, and so on. But can you provide us with some insight into like how coaching, whether it's what you do, or what's what other coaches may do, how that can actually enhance communication skills or leadership skills? Like, are there exercises that you have developed or that you practice to help people with that part of their lives?
Yeah, let's choose, just by way of example, effective communication. I would define that as, are you clear, concise, and powerful in the way that you speak and the way that you write? That's probably one of a dozen or so different functional core competencies that I and other coaches, I'm sure, spend time in developing with their clients. There's any number of qualitative tools and quantitative tools to help you become a better communicator. So, for example, I'll give you a call I just left right now prior to our interview. I'm the head of recruiting for a very popular consumer tech health and wellness app, like top 5 by downloads by iOS, is wanting to level up his communication style, particularly when he's running recruitment processes at the CTO level.
Okay.
And one element of clarity and concision in the way that we communicate is, how do you remove or filler words from your diction, from your cadence? And as a nerdy Indian kid, I never played a ton of sports growing up. That wasn't my superpower, but I did a lot of speech and debate in high school and in college. Was one of the top 20 speech and debate competitors in the US. Did mock trial at Berkeley where we won nationals. So if anything, maybe that's a superpower of mine. But now I help to deploy that in the corporate world. So for example, when trying to remove or these filler words, there's some hacks and there's some repetitions that we do live in our coaching sessions, so that you can trick your brain to introduce pauses or other words that will get you the same outcome, just like I am now. Notice I'm slowing down my speech a little bit. I'm trying to think of the next thing. But if I do my job well, I'm not saying You couldn't really tell that I was trying to buy more time to say the next thing. Those little heuristics can be learned over time doing live repetitions with clients in a coaching call. Nowadays,
I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 second. I've worked with you. I've worked with a few other coaches over the years as well, and sometimes I find the biggest value that a coach provides is, the perspective is the first thing, which is the ideas, but it's really the accountability. It's carving that 1 hour once a week, or 1 hour every other week, to not just know I shouldn't say or and, but to actually practice doing it.
Yes, and as it relates to the accountability piece, I'll double down on 2 pieces. Number one is, and I'm sure several of your clients will be looking for a coach, and I'll skip ahead to one question you may ask me later, which is, how do you know a coach is right for you? A lot of it comes down to that song and dance, the give and take in style. The style that I tend to have with clients can be very direct. Doesn't feel good necessarily. Often you'll feel like there's a transformation, and I will be a cheerleader and a thought partner for you, but the accountability could be someone calling you out and having you stop in the context of practicing for an interview. Like, hey, stop that, start again. You keep using Don't have to be a drill sergeant, but some clients who are used to that style of communication and thrive under that tend to like working with me, because that's where I've kind of grown up. But as it relates to accountability, one of the cool things now with tech, specifically with AI-based solutions now, is you don't need to wait for our next 1 hour session on Zoom or our next meeting at the Ferry Building or down in the Valley. There are some tools, for example, a company called Talkwell. I recently met the co-founder, or rather the founder of a company called Talkwell. It's a piece of software that my clients can download natively on their device. This is not cloud-based. Ironically, this is on-prem. And it will give you analytics based on the way in which you communicate. There's a lot of these tools out there. However, it will provide, for example, if I use Talkwell in this conversation right now, how many times am I using a word that tends to hedge my expertise? How many times am I using a word where I'm maybe overly self-aggrandizing? I'm bragging too much. Am I saying or ah? Am I overly deferential? Tushar, am I interrupting you, or am I taking up too much space? Those analytics are provided offline asynchronously to me with my clients, so that when we next meet, I have a full view into each of their meetings with their one-on-ones with their direct reports, or with stakeholders, or with external partners, and we can establish data-driven goals against, well, we want to drive a 15 percentage point decrease in the number of ums that you use when you communicate at your weekly tech stand-up. This happens, like this is a thing.
Yeah.
And we can measure ourselves against that. So it's not even just the accountability at the time point of each 1 hour session, it's in between as well. And that's a really cool thing, because we get to test out new technology, but it really enables the client to see the ROI of the coaching work. And you need to hold your coach accountable to drive outcomes as well. Again, this is not just to feel good and have somebody to vent about your day. You may do some of that, but it's all in an advancement of an OKR or a goal that you've taken with your client.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, these tools that allow you to work on yourself, sometimes even asynchronously with a coach, they're all out there. I think
Right.
living in a very unique age, because there's no shortage of information and there's no shortage of tools. There's only a shortage of desire and time. And so that's really helpful. You're obviously working in an industry that is all about developing someone's soft skills, and that can be a very difficult thing to measure progress. And so how in particular do you measure your success as a coach? I know there's so many different metrics there that you could measure, but how do you guys measure progress and success with your clients?
You saw me laugh when you used the word soft skill, and I only laugh because often it's a pejorative when we think about hard quantitative STEM-based skills versus basically everything else. And the euphemism that folks often use these days is power skills. So for example, a power skill / soft skill could be, how are you at being a coach, not a boss? And when you're a manager, are you truly coaching people, or are you just bossing them around? Or to what extent are you able to navigate difficult conversations? Or to what extent can you lead conversations with empathy? There's a lot of these platitudes, like live, laugh, love stuff that you'll see on, again, Instagram accounts. Behind each of those, though, there are measurable, quantifiable ways to measure your acumen on those intangible skills that are often the differentiator when it comes to promotion, when it comes to what company gets funding, when it comes to who gets to run a new initiative or get tapped in to establish a new market. And so depending on the specific core competency, I work upfront with my clients, number one, to make sure we get that quantitative baseline. One of the most powerful tools out there is called the Leadership Circle Profile, the LCP, on across north of 100 different objective measurement tools. You get a calibration, you take a 360 assessment, and that is then married against about 100,000 other respondents in the corporate world. So you can start to establish percentile comparisons relative to other professionals in any number of areas. But that's only one layer of an exact science, right? The first is you take a quantitative baseline at the beginning of coaching. And let's say that the soft skill that we decide to develop is your visibility in an organization. Like how much more soft can you get than like improve your visibility in a company? One of the tools that a coach and a client can build out, and when I say tool, it's like spreadsheet, slides, names, document. This is not just vaporware. You can build out an influence map inside your organization based on your goals in the long run, based on the core competencies of your job. Who are the stakeholders that matter for you? So let's take as an example, one of my clients is a senior product leader at Snap, and she's taken on a new division where she's now responsible for certain revenue generating Snap features that she had never worked on before. There's a new cast of characters. For those of us in tech and you work in product, you have your design team, your eng team. In some limited cases at Snap, you have a go-to-market sales team, you have a partnerships team, data science, etc. You're the GM effectively of a business unit. And so a tool that we built out is an organization map the names of individuals, and then we scored the depth and breadth of her relationship with each of those key actors across the organization. We charted out over 3, 6, 9, 12 months. What does that relationship need to be like? Are you being tapped in for the right meetings? Are you being leaned on for new projects? And there's other measures of the depth and quality of that relationship. But we build out a scorecard and we constantly track that every quarter or so. And we build a plan for, well, if I need to drive visibility with our new CTO, well, what does that mean? Do I need to prepare some documents and briefs to earn a seat at the table? Do I need to make sure that I deliver on certain metrics so that I get access to other parts of the company? The tactics I'm making up here to maintain privacy for my client, but something so nebulous as visibility, you can build out a tool and hold each other accountable. There's no numbers there necessarily, but at the end of that year, when she realized she started to get a one-on-one with that senior technical lead and get invited earlier in the technical planning process, then she knew, you know what, I can check that box, and I built that resilient relationship. And lo and behold, next time promotions came up, the visibility thing didn't show up anymore. So there's ways to qualify and quantify some of these very amorphous goals. And we talked about strategic thinking. I won't go deep into the example right now, but there's absolutely ways you can measure whether or not you are a strategic thinker in your job.
Okay, that's really helpful. I think we have about 2 minutes left here, so I want to go through just the last two questions I have for you. One, if you are able, could you share one success story that you've had with one of your clients, and get a, how did you take that person from A to B? And if you need to keep the names confidential, that's totally fine too.
Yeah, I'm going to have to keep it confidential just by virtue of I tend to work with people in very public positions. And you'll see on my website several testimonials where people's names are there. But I think the story that stands apart from the 2 to 4 dozen case studies of where people started from here and have gone from here, whether it's a promotion, getting access to a new job, having a better relationship in their life with their family, etc. There's a particular person who sticks out in my mind who was at the partner track at Deloitte. She's a consultant for almost 2 decades. She knew this was not the right job for her. She wanted to become an operating person, a marketer in tech, specifically for a piece of software that you and I, many of us use every day. It's a very large design company. Mm-hmm. And she was holding herself back. She was not able to articulate the value that she brought to Deloitte. She was not able to articulate the value that she brought, not just as a consultant, but as a marketer, someone who is creative. And through the process of working with her, from understanding her elevator pitch, her about me statement, understanding her first principles, I helped her navigate a career transition to get a dream job, her dream job at a company. And she's going to be the future CMO of this company one day. Like, you'll see her name in the news. And that, first of all, it's very selfishly fulfilling to see someone who they were holding themselves back, the saboteur. She broke into her dream job and she's still there. And a part of that is, one, helping to inspire the confidence that, yeah, you can leave. You're on partner track at Deloitte, but you're kind of miserable, almost been there for 2 decades. What would it be like to break into a more vibrant industry where things are changing every 2 to 3 months, especially now this particular company is heavily using AI and allowing people that are creating images and creating videos. That has been one of the most transformative experiences. And now she's gainfully employed in her new role. And now I'm helping her scale her leadership, where she's now hiring her first set of other senior hires. She's hiring the same people at the level that she wanted to be at. And so that's been probably one of the most fulfilling experiences of many. I mean, there's lots of folks that I've worked with to evoke transformation, but this is the one that really sticks out of my mind.
Wow, that's incredible, because I feel like there's so many people who just have the talent and they need something else to help that talent shine. And you obviously know how to ask the right questions and do the right exercises to help extract more value from an already talented person.
Yeah, it's all about the questions, evocative, open-ended questions that can sometimes be very, very, very pointed and direct. They may not feel nice, but they come from a good place, come from someone that cares about you, but they're dispassionate. I'm not burdened by the same things that your friends or family or colleagues might be burdened with, but I care about you just as much, if not more, in some cases.
Awesome. Well, last question I have for you is, what advice would you offer to professionals who are considering engaging with an executive coach? to kind of further their success.
Do a little bit of introspection to the extent that you can. If your HR team offers a 360 assessment or some kind of internal tool, get a calibration for your leadership acumen. This is different. This is not a performance review. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's access to tools like Glint or the Leadership Circle profile or Hogan assessments or Franklin Covey's 360 assessment. Whatever that is, try to take advantage of some of the tools there to understand what are the gaps based on the life that I want to lead. Right, my concept of ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese term for your reason for being, right? What is your ikigai and where are you relative to that? That's point number one. Point number two is, if you're going to speak with an executive or leadership coach, you can find folks like myself on LinkedIn, or I don't list myself on any third-party platforms. I build a robust business kind of direct to consumers, so you can reach out to me, but make sure you talk to at least 3 coaches as you evaluate other coaches, because there's people with lots of great pedigree of worked at companies like LinkedIn and Dropbox and the equivalent of LinkedIn and Dropbox and other industries. There's no shortage of coaches that have a lot of great corporate leadership, but push and test a coach on, are our styles going to fit? How do you ask questions? Are you going to arm me with assignments, or are we just going to jump on Zoom and talk for an hour? And what wins do they have in helping to evoke transformation others? So vet your coaches and vet at least 3 of them. And then finally, have a perspective on what ROI looks like for you. Your coach should absolutely have a perspective on, Tushar, you're not going to spend 6 months together in a 12-session package, right? Meeting 6 months, twice a week. What are you going to get out of this? What do you want to tell about your career narrative after working with me? If you can't answer that for yourself, it's probably not the right time to work with the coach, but your coach should also be able to answer that for you after you have a bit of a discovery call with them.
Understood. That's really helpful. Rohan, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We need to have a glass of wine and talk about Ikigai sometime soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they reach out?
2 ways. Preferred is reach out to me on LinkedIn, Rohan Verma, Arbor Advisory, or you can go to my website, arboradvisory.co, not .com.co. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I share a lot of leadership development topic, best practices, tips. Always connect with me on there, and I'd be happy to grab a 30-minute discovery call. If you're in the Bay Area, happy to meet up for coffee as well.
Perfect. And for anyone watching, if you'd like an introduction to Rohan as well, feel free to let me know, and we'll make sure that to get you connected. Thank you so much, Rohan.
Thank you, Tushar.
All right.